It's been a while since I touched base with any of the NZXT products, and finally we have something new here. We're going to talk today about the NZXT H5 Flow RGB, and wow, this case looks really impressive, and I'm comparing it to their past models in this segment, right? Because we have fine mesh here, we have fine mesh on front, we have fine mesh on top, and we have fine mesh here in the power supply shroud compartment region, right? So this case compared to the past generation is really airflow friendly, definitely. And I'm quite impressed in that segment. I really didn't expect it to be like this. I didn't expect it to have so much space in the power supply shroud compartment. I didn't expect loads of things, and it is in a kind of way positive. So this case comes equipped with the F360 core RGB. You get one F120Q at the back, which is non-RGB. And all in all, what you can do here is you can place 8 fans. And we can go with 3 120 on front, you could go with 2 120 on top, and you could go 1 120 at the rear, 2 120 on the power supply shroud. Now, the thing about, I'll continue with the numbers, with the fans and radiators quite shortly, but since I'm on the power supply shroud, there's something a bit strange here. So they placed the case flat on the table, right? There's no intake from this bottom part. The intake is coming from this part and from the mesh part at the back side. You place 2 fans here that create nice airflow, picking up the air from the sides. And then you have a power supply that is intentionally flipped, so the fan is on top. So I don't know how this creates the airflow for the power supply, but I don't think it should be bad, hopefully. So that's the only thing that it's a bit, tricky, and I'm trying to think about that a bit more, but yeah. So let's continue. 2 120 here on the power supply shroud, 1 120 at the rear. Then we have a possibility 2 120 or 2 140 at the top, including a 240 radiator and 280, but the 280 radiator has the maximum thickness of 55 millimeters and low profile rams. Then on the front we can go with 3 120 or 2 140 fans, or up to 360 radiator, which is really solid. And if you don't want to place a 240 at the top, you can go with 360 at the front and then just place some fans at the top. That's it. Then when we talk about some other details, 170 millimeters for the CPU tower cooler, GPU can go up to 410, power supply up to 200 millimeters. And an interesting thing about the power supply shroud, it has a caddy for storage, right? As per usual. But it's not 3.5 inch, because most of the manufacturers place 3.5 inch caddies, and you can use them for 2.5 inch SSDs. I actually prefer this one because you have a cage that supports 2.5 inch SSDs, and on top you can mount one 3.5 inch hard drive. And this is why they emptied the spot behind the motherboard where you can place their controller for controlling your RGB. I don't know, the F360 core, the RGB fan at the back, whatever you want to think about. So that's really good, and I'm really digging it. Slick design, clean, and definitely it's lighter case than usual, but the material is really high quality and everything is done properly. I see no flaws in the design in general, and I'm really digging the case. It can support up to E80X motherboard. That size goes up to 277 millimeters wide. Of course, ATX, micro ATX, and mini ATX. Cable management space at the back, and I'll continue more on that quite soon. 28.7 millimeters. Front I/O ports, we have USB 3.2 Type A, USB 3.2 generation 2x2 Type C, 20 gigabits per second, 4-pole 3.5 millimeter headset audio microphone jack, and you have, of course, power on the button. We have at the back 7 expansion slots. And for the fans that are included in the case, we have F360 RGB core, which speed goes up to 1700 RPMs, airflow is 50.1 CFM, static pressure is 1.27 millimeters H2O, and noise is 23.3 decibels. For the F120Q, we have speeds going up to 1350 RPMs, airflow is 60.2 CFM, static pressure is 1.05 millimeters H2O, and noise maximum is 24.1 decibels. I think that's quite solid. I think that's quite solid story. But let's discuss the products here. So we have H5 Flow RGB. We have the Kraken Elite 240 RGB. We're having C1200 gold power supply, which is something new as well. Then we have their N7Z790 motherboard, the Intel Core i7-14700K, paired up with RTX 4080 Super Gaming X Slim, and we have Kingston Fury RGB DDR5 2x16 at 8000 megahertz. All in all, I think this looks quite nice. And the whole build and visuals minimalism, when we're talking about NZXT cases in general, they're still sticking to it, and I'm really loving that concept. Now, benchmarks, right? We have AIDA 64 Extreme Edition CPU going up to 82 degrees, while the clock speed is at 5400 megahertz, and the GPU is 67. So most likely, if you add more fans here at the power supply shroud, you can lower it down. The CPU is at 82 because of the 240. If we place 360, it would definitely go lower, under 80s without a doubt. And most importantly, Cinebench. From 81, eventually touching 84 only once, but the average is 83 degrees. 5400 megahertz constant throughout whole 10 runs, and it starts with 31,644 Cinebench score. It starts building up until the 8th run, up to 33,324. The last two, I don't know what happened, but I'm guessing that after that it will continue to pick up and continue with outstanding performance. What I'm talking about here is a great solid minimalistic case. In terms of, you have the airflow, the fans original are dead silent, unless you really want to crank up the CPU and the GPU. They really pick up the pace and do create additional some sort of a noise level. You can always regulate that. That's quite straightforward. Then when we go with the design, as I said, minimalism for NZXT in their cases has always been there, and big thumbs up for that. At the bottom of the power supply shroud, you have really enough space to do the cable management, and at the back side you have cable canals, as per usual for NZXT cases, with Velcro ties, so you can reroute the EPS cable on the side with a Velcro tie, eventually using one zip tie. You can reroute 24 pin and all the other cables that need to go from the IO ports with 3 Velcro ties, and then just hide the cables in the power supply shroud, because you still have enough space for those storage drives near the power supply. So yeah, digging the case. Big thumbs up to NZXT for the H5 Flow RGB. The only thing that I have to say, apart from the power supply being flipped, is the F360 core, that the sideline doesn't light up as is advertised, because I think it's picking up the RGB from the fan. And my thoughts are that they need to pick up the RGB game in those terms. Not RGB, just the lights. I'm talking RGB because they have it in their name. The thing is, it picks up the light from the fan from the middle where the motor is. And it's not that bright enough, because I did crank up the brightness to the maximum. It's not bright enough because you can see you only have one segment here lighting up, and that's it. I mean, all in all, it's a cool combination, because you're using F360 core RGB just with 4 screws, and you're placing 3 fans. So that's loving it. Loving that. It's just outstanding what they did. In general cases, top notch. And for $130 with 4 fans, well, 2 fans basically, but 4 fans, I think that's quite solid. I think that's quite solid when we take the minimalism. They're just a design, but the quality is still there, and this is what I'm loving. And of course, there's going to be more NZXT products coming quite shortly, and I'm quite thrilled about that. So if you want to check those videos out, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of the future videos. And until then, do check, if you're interested in H5 Flow RGB or the Kraken Elite 240 RGB, maybe pair up everything all together with the C1200 Gold motherboard. If you're not into Intel, you want to AMD, which is quite logical at the current situation, totally understandable. They also have AMD motherboards. So yeah, there's that. Guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.